The desert doesn't speak, it remembers. Out here in Dust Hollow, secrets don't stay buried, they dry up and rise with the wind. And when a man tries to outrun what he's done, the land has a way of leading it back to his door. This is not just the story of a cowboy. It's the unraveling of a legacy forged in betrayal, silence and choices that never stopped bleeding. Hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? The heat was the kind that made horses restless and men mean. Dust Hollow, a sun-bleached pocket of worn-out buildings and even more worn-out souls, had long since stopped hoping for rain or redemption. The town survived on fear, liquor, and who held the most lead in their belt. Eli Mercer rode back from town with a sack of flour, jerky, and a bottle of whiskey he didn't intend to drink. His boots hit the dirt outside his ranch house just as the sun started melting into the hills. Quiet, too quiet. Not a bird in the sky, just wind and old ghosts. Then he saw her, a girl, no more than 8 or 9, skin cracked from sun, eyes wild from hunger. She stood at the edge of the path, barefoot, with a rag tied around her head like a makeshift crown. Eli stopped mid-step, one hand resting on the revolver holstered low on his hip. She didn't beg, she just looked at him. That look, he'd seen it before, in war, in fire, in the eyes of those left behind. He should have walked past. The safe thing, the smart thing. But something in his chest shifted. He reached into his bag and pulled out a piece of hard bread and a tin of beans. Wordlessly, he handed it to her. She blinked, took it, sat cross-legged in the dirt and started to eat without a sound. Eli turned and went inside. He didn't look back. He didn't sleep either. At dawn, the wind died. And then silence, thicker than fog, heavier than grief. Eli opened the door. They were there, hundreds of them. Warriors, men in leathers and feathers, painted with the stories of blood and survival. Their faces unreadable. Not one weapon drawn, not one word spoken. Eli froze. He wasn't afraid. Not exactly. He'd faced death before, many times, but this was different. This wasn't a fight. It felt like a verdict. He stepped onto the porch, one hand on the railing, scanning the rows of unmoving figures. He tried to speak. Nothing came out. And then, in the far distance, the sound of hooves. 6, maybe 7 riders. Dust rose behind them like smoke. The law was coming, or what passed for it. Clay Riggins, the sheriff of Dust Hollow and Eli's oldest enemy, rode in with 3 deputies and 2 ranchers turned volunteers. He pulled his horse to a stop just before the first line of warriors. "Well, well," Riggins said, pushing back his hat with a finger crooked like a claw. "Look at this." He eyed Eli. "You finally picked a side, huh?" Eli didn't answer. Riggins dismounted, stepping forward like he owned the ground. "We got word you were harboring hostiles. Now I see it with my own eyes. They haven't done a damn thing," Eli said, voice like gravel. "You fed one of them. That's doing enough." The silence among the warriors was suffocating. No movement, no anger, just a judgment that didn't need guns to be deadly. Riggins smirked. "Ain't it funny, Mercer? All those years killing them for coin, now you're breaking bread with their kids." A deputy stepped forward. "What's the order, Sheriff?" But Riggins didn't answer. His eyes never left Eli. "You remember Araniki?" The name hit like a punch to the ribs. Riggins leaned closer. "That child you fed, she's his blood." Eli's hand tightened on the railing. Araniki, the one who got away, the one whose village Eli had burned under the banner of bounty and revenge. The past wasn't just catching up, it was already here. "I should take you in right now," Riggins said. "You don't have that right." Riggins laughed. "I got the badge and I got the town, that's all the right I need." The warriors didn't move, they didn't flinch, but the message was clear. Eli was theirs now. Whether for mercy or justice, that would be decided soon enough. Riggins mounted again. "Don't go nowhere. Mercer, this ain't over." They rode off, kicking dust and disdain in their wake. Eli looked out over the sea of faces, all eyes on him, waiting, remembering. And suddenly, the silence spoke louder than any bullet. He wasn't just being watched, he was being weighed, and the scales had already started to tip. The air in Dust Hollow grew heavier by the hour. Word spread faster than a bullet. Eli Mercer, the outlaw turned recluse, had broken bread with an Indian child. And now, 300 warriors stood like statues around his home. By noon, the saloon was packed wall to wall. Men whispered over whiskey, women crossed themselves, and old-timers spat tobacco, claiming they always knew Eli was a traitor waiting to happen. Clay Riggins made his entrance like a man walking into a stage he owned. His spurs clicked across the floorboards, his chest puffed out like a rooster. "He's planning something," he told the room. "You think a man like Eli Mercer ever gives without asking for something in return?" No one answered, but the looks they gave said everything. The town was ready to turn. Back at the ranch, Eli hadn't moved from the porch. The warriors still held their ground, forming a silent wall around the property. No threats, no weapons drawn, just presence. Then came the memory, the fire, the screaming. The night Eli and the Hermanos de Fumasa had ridden into the tribal camp. Chasing a bounty they claimed was tied to raids and rustling. He'd led them. He'd ordered the flames. He remembered a man with eyes like stone, Aranaki, dragging his wounded body through the embers to protect what little remained. Eli had believed he left that memory in the ashes, but now it stood before him, grown, multiplied and silent. He went inside, locked the door. The tin of beans was still open on the table, the girl's fingerprints faint on its surface. Her presence had lingered even after she vanished. He didn't know where she had gone, but they did. He looked out the back window. In the distance, through a shimmer of heat, he saw movement, a figure on horseback, moving slow, familiar, dangerous. Maybelle. She rode up like the storm she'd always been, hair tied back, eyes sharp as broken glass. She dismounted without a word, walking up to the porch with a hand on her hip. "You really did it this time." "Eli," she said. He opened the door, stepped aside. She didn't enter. "They're saying you're planning to hand the town over to Aranake. I gave a starving kid something to eat." "Don't play saint with me," she snapped. "You left your own wife and child to burn with the rest of us when those outlaws came through 2 years back. You think anyone forgot that?" Eli's jaw clenched. He didn't answer. Maybelle stepped closer. "I saw Maya that night, Eli. She was screaming your name while the smoke rose. And you, where were you?" He closed his eyes. The image was there, clear and cruel, a promise broken by gunfire and cowardice. "I didn't know where to run," he said finally. "I chose wrong." Maybelle's voice dropped. "You didn't choose wrong, you chose yourself." She turned to leave. "You better figure out what side you're on, because when they move, and they will, you won't be able to ride away from this one." Night fell again. Fires lit up the horizon, ceremonial or threatening. Eli couldn't tell. And then came the sound. Hoofbeats, one horse, steady. From the shadows stepped a young warrior, bare-chested, painted with red streaks across his shoulders. In his hand, a leather string, a necklace. Eli stood as the warrior approached the porch. He said one word, "Maya." He held the necklace up. A piece of green stone dangled at the end. It was Maya's. Eli had given it to her on the day they'd married under the oak tree by the canyon ridge. The warrior didn't smile, didn't threaten. He simply placed the necklace on the porch railing, turned, and disappeared into the night. Eli picked it up with trembling fingers. It was worn but intact. She was alive. Not only that, she had sent this as a message, a warning, or something more. His knees gave out as he sank onto the steps, clutching the pendant. Everything he had buried was clawing its way back through the dust. He stared out into the darkness. The warriors hadn't moved, but everything inside him had. The sun rose pale and unforgiving, casting long, trembling shadows over the dry soil of Dust Hollow. Eli hadn't slept. The necklace burned in his hand all night, not with heat, but with memory. Every time he looked at it, he saw Maya's face the way it had been, before the smoke, before the screams, before he'd made the choice he never stopped regretting. By morning, the town was boiling. People lined the dirt road, waiting. For what? They didn't know. But trouble had a smell in Dust Hollow, and now it was thick in the air. Eli stepped down from the porch. The warriors hadn't left. They'd merely shifted, now sitting in rows, staring at him with unreadable expressions. There was no anger, no fear, only expectation, like a jury waiting for the accused to speak. Then came the voices. Look who finally decided to show himself. A group of men on horseback approached the ranch, led not by lawmen, but by townsfolk. And in the center of the group rode Maybelle. She wasn't wearing her usual saloon dresses. She wore black now, with her silver revolver strapped high on her waist. She dismounted and walked ahead of the others, dust curling around her boots, like smoke from a dying fire. "You want to explain what the hell you've done?" "Eli," she shouted loud enough for the warriors to hear, "because the whole town's ready to set fire to your name." Eli stepped forward. His face was dry, but his hands were shaking. "I fed a child," he said. Maybelle laughed bitterly. "No, Eli. You fed a ghost." Murmurs rose behind her. Men shifted in their saddles. Someone spit in the dirt. Then she raised her voice again. "Tell him, Eli. Tell him about the wife and kid you left behind when the riders came. About the night Dust Hollow burned and you ran." The words hit like gunshots. "You think feeding one little girl wipes that away?" she went on. "That necklace don't make you a husband again. Don't make you a father." Eli's throat closed, but he forced himself to speak. "I didn't run," he said. "I was too late. I came back, and it was already ash." "And you didn't go looking?" Maybelle snarled. "You vanished into the desert while we buried what was left." Silence fell. From the back of the crowd, an old rancher spoke up. He was one of them, the Hermanos de Fumasa. Killed Indians, took gold, burned villages. Ain't no surprise they're here now. They want blood. A younger man yelled, "Why don't we give him to them?" Eli didn't flinch. "Then do it," he said, voice flat. "But you better hope they leave you something behind when they're done." Another voice, clearer, more confident, cut through the tension. "He's right." Everyone turned. It was Sheriff Clay Riggins. He strolled up from the edge of the crowd like a man arriving late to a dinner he knew he'd dominate. He didn't look tired or worried, just pleased. Riggins nodded toward the warriors. "You think they're just waiting out here for bread and forgiveness?" "No, they're waiting for the storm to break. And Eli here, he's the lightning rod." Eli watched Riggins carefully. There was something else beneath his words. A plan, a trap. "We arrest Mercer now," Riggins said calmly. "We might prevent something worse. Keep this town standing." Maybelle hesitated. The men behind her didn't. They moved forward. Eli didn't run. He didn't reach for a weapon. He just stood still, eyes locked on the ground as two men dismounted and grabbed his arms. And that's when it happened. From the edge of the warrior line, a single child stepped forward, the same girl from before. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She only raised her hand and pointed to Eli. A soft murmur swept through the line of warriors. One by one they stood, like stalks rising in a windless field. Riggins froze. The deputies reached for their belts. "Hold it!" he barked. The tension was unbearable. Then the girl stepped between Eli and the mob. She stood facing the crowd, a slight figure in the morning light but with the presence of a storm. She reached into her tunic and pulled something out, a folded piece of cloth. She held it up. It was a flag, worn, torn. The same one Aranaki's tribe had flown before the raid all those years ago. Gasps rippled through the townspeople. Men took steps back. Even Riggins paled. The girl turned and placed the cloth at Eli's feet. He looked down. Blood dried in the corners. Stitches frayed from years of hiding. His shame, his past, his crime. He knelt, picked it up, and for the first time in a long time, he let himself feel it. The weight, the guilt, the grief, and the need, aching and hollow, for something like redemption. "I'll go with you," he said to Riggins, "but not for them, for her." He looked at the child. "She's not just hungry, she's history." The crowd didn't cheer, no one clapped, but no one moved to stop him either. As the sheriff cuffed Eli's hands and led him down the dirt road, the warriors parted, letting him pass, watching him go, and in the silence, Dust Hollow held its breath, because something was shifting, and nothing was going to be the same again. The cell was small, dark and hot. No breeze, no light, just the quiet ticking of shame. Eli sat on the bench, wrists raw from the iron cuffs Riggins had fastened too tight. The old jailhouse hadn't been used in years. Mostly drunks and thieves ended up behind its rusted bars. But today, it held something else. A reckoning. Outside, the streets of Dust Hollow boiled with tension. Some townsfolk believed the arrest would calm the storm. Others feared it would be the spark. The warriors still hadn't moved from the ridge beyond the town, like statues, like shadows, like fate. Eli kept his eyes on the floor. He didn't speak, didn't ask questions. The moment the child laid that torn flag at his feet, something inside him cracked open. Not pain, not guilt. Something deeper, older. The kind of truth a man carries like a bullet lodged too close to the heart to ever remove. The door creaked open. Clay Riggins stepped in, tipping his hat with mock courtesy. Behind him, Deputy Lorne carried a shotgun like a trophy. Riggins smiled, leaning against the bars. "Comfortable?" Eli didn't answer. Riggins chuckled. "You've got the whole town ready to explode, and here you are, playing the silent martyr." Still, Eli stayed quiet. Riggins sighed. "You always thought you were better than the rest of us, even when we were with the Hermanos de Fumasa, riding through fire and gold. You gave the orders, Eli. You lit the match." Eli finally spoke, voice low and rough. "And you kept the gold." Riggins's eyes hardened. "Don't get noble now. You think these people care about Maya? About that child? They care about their land, their livestock, their false peace." He stepped closer. "I'm giving you a chance. Say you acted alone. Say you regret what you did. Let them pin it all on you. Maybe, just maybe, you die with your name still intact." Eli looked up, his face calm but unreadable. "You want a scapegoat, but you forget ghosts don't stay buried in the desert." Riggins's smile faded. "You're playing a dangerous game." Eli leaned forward. "Then pray I lose." The sheriff stared at him for a moment longer, then turned on his heel and walked out. Eli sat back against the wall, the heat pressing in from all sides. He closed his eyes, and the past returned vivid and merciless. The day Maya gave birth to Lila, her small hand gripping his pinky. The lullabies Maya hummed when the world outside was all fire and chaos. Then the night they came, the Chama Branca. Not just bandits, not just thieves, they were vultures. Led by Jonas Vane, men who didn't need reasons to destroy, only silence. He had been too far from the homestead when the smoke rose. He saw it from the ridge. He rode like hell, heart-breaking with every hoofbeat. But by the time he arrived, the cabin was rubble, blood on the doorframe. No sign of Maya, no sign of Lila. He buried what he found, and buried himself with it. A key turned in the lock. Eli opened his eyes. A young warrior stood at the doorway, holding a folded cloth in one hand. It was Tenok. He said nothing at first, just walked slowly to the bars and knelt. Then he unfolded the cloth. Inside it, Maya's necklace. Again, but this time, tied to it, a small strip of paper. Eli reached through the bars, took it, hands trembling. He unfolded the paper. One word, written in a shaky, familiar hand. "Wait!" He looked up, eyes burning. Tenok's voice was quiet, steady. "She lives." Eli's breath caught. "She remembers," Tenok continued. "She forgives nothing, but she remembers." Before Eli could speak, Tenok stood, disappeared through the door, leaving only the message, the necklace, and a flicker of something Eli hadn't felt in years. Hope. That night the saloon filled again. Whiskey poured like water. Fists nearly flew. But above all, the town waited. Then the doors slammed open. Jonas Vane walked in, tall, polished boots, long coat dusted with the road. Smiling like a man who knew the game was rigged in his favor, he tipped his hat to Maybelle behind the bar. "Evening, darling," he said smoothly. She didn't smile, didn't speak. Jonas turned to the room. "Seems y'all got yourselves a problem. Thought maybe it's time someone came along to offer solutions." He dropped a pouch of coins on the table. "First one to silence Eli Mercer for good. Gets double this." Gasps, murmurs. Jonas smiled. Outside, the wind howled, and behind bars, Eli sat with Maya's message in his hand, waiting. Dust Hollow held its breath as night fell, then exhaled in smoke. The first fire started on the northern ridge near the trading post. By the time the bell rang, a second blaze danced through the tribal encampment on the edge of town. No gunshots, no warnings, just flames. Whispered rumors said it wasn't an accident. Jonas Vane watched from the balcony of the saloon, arms folded, a glass of bourbon in hand. Below, his men moved like phantoms, setting, planting, vanishing. The chaos was calculated, the fear manufactured. Dust Hollow was ripe for taking. The next morning, the town square was smoke-choked and furious. Ash clung to windowsills. Children cried, horses bucked, and Eli Mercer, still behind bars, listened to it all from his cell as the town turned violent in his name. Maybelle stormed into the sheriff's office. "You see what you've done?" She spat at Riggins. "You let Jonas in. Now the whole town's burning." Riggins sat at his desk, eyes red from the night. "I didn't light those fires." "No," she snapped. "You just opened the doors." Riggins didn't respond. Instead, he rose, walked to the cell, and stared at Eli. "This you?" he asked. Eli looked him dead in the eyes. "You really think 300 warriors would stand in silence all this time, and then burn the town without drawing a single bow?" Riggins said nothing. Then Maybelle reached into her coat, slammed down a bundle of papers on the desk, found these in Jonas's saddlebag at the saloon. Maps, deeds, plans. He's buying out the land while everyone's looking the other way. Eli stepped to the bars. "He's making you dance for smoke while he steals the soil." Riggins stared at the documents, jaw working. Then he looked at Eli. "Why would Maya give you this?" he asked quietly. Eli didn't answer. Riggins turned to Maybelle. "Unlock him." She paused. "You're serious?" "Now." With a metallic click, the cell opened. Eli stepped out, rubbing his wrists. Riggins tossed him his gun belt. "You shoot me, and this town's yours to bury." Eli took the belt, strapped it on, and turned toward the door. "No," Maybelle said. "We're not doing this in the dark." The next hour was thunder. Jonas rode into the town square with 10 armed men, flanked by dust and arrogance. Eli waited in the center of the street, hat low, coat flapping in the wind. The townsfolk crowded at the edges, whispering. The tribal warriors lined the ridge, silent as ever. Jonas dismounted, grinning like the devil himself. "Here we are," he said, "back where it always ends, in the dust." "I'm not here to duel," Eli said. "Oh?" Jonas tilted his head. "Then why the holster?" "I'm here to end it another way." He nodded at Maybelle, who stepped forward and read aloud the contents of the papers Jonas had hidden. Forged claims, bribes, signatures from dead men. A plan to seize Dust Hollow, tribe and all, and flip it to railroad tycoons for a fortune. Jonas's smile faltered. Riggins walked forward next, holding up another piece of evidence, one Maya had smuggled out before her disappearance. A letter, signed by Riggins himself, selling out half the territory to men in New Orleans in exchange for gold. The town fell silent. Jonas reached for his gun, but Eli didn't. Instead, he stepped forward and drew his revolver slowly, then turned it to the ground and fired into the dirt. A single, heavy shot. The dust kicked up between them. A symbol. Jonas froze. "You're not worth my bullet," Eli said, "but they'll finish what I started." Behind him, the townspeople stepped forward, and from the ridge, warriors began walking silently into town, not with weapons, but with purpose. Jonas backed up, eyes darting. He was losing the crowd. He turned to flee, but found his path blocked by Tenok, standing tall, holding only the flag of Aranaki's tribe in his hand. Jonas's men looked at one another, unsure, and then they lowered their guns. The fire in the street still smoldered, but Dust Hollow had just turned a corner, and Eli Mercer, outlaw, coward, father, was at the center of it. Noon came with no wind, only dust hanging like breath, not yet exhaled. The town square of Dust Hollow, once a place of slow barter and bad whiskey, now stood as a trial ground. People lined the edges, silent, unsure. Suspicion lingered in every glance. Jonas Vane was gone, not arrested, not punished, just vanished. Riggins claimed he'd slipped out during the confusion, but no one truly believed that. Some whispered he'd been seen riding west. Others said the desert had swallowed him whole. Either way, the damage was done. Now all eyes turned to Eli Mercer. He stood in the middle of the square, unarmed, watching as Riggins climbed the makeshift platform built beside the old gallows. His voice rang out sharp and clear. "Dust Hollow has been deceived," he said, "by traitors, by ghosts, by men with blood on their hands." He turned toward Eli. "And yet some ghosts still walk among us." Murmurs echoed. The warriors had not left. They now stood in the very town they had once fled from, silent, eyes steady. Then Riggins did something unexpected. He opened a leather satchel. From it, he pulled a folded parchment and a bundle of letters, signed, stamped, sealed in a familiar hand. Maya Mercer, Riggins announced, kept records. She knew what was coming. He turned to the crowd. "These documents detail land transfers, corrupt deals, and alliances that were never meant to see light. But they also reveal the truth about one man, Eli Mercer." The townsfolk leaned in. Eli did not move. Riggins unfolded the top sheet. "Mercer," he read, "did not flee during the raid 2 years ago. He was already gone, summoned by a letter from Riggins himself. A letter now confirmed to be forged." Gasps. Maybelle stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "You forged that summons?" she asked. Riggins didn't blink. "I did what I had to do." Maybelle slapped him hard enough to turn his face. The crowd erupted, but Eli raised a hand. The silence returned. "I can't undo what I've done," he said, voice steady. "Not to them, not to her, not to this town." He looked around. "But if the truth matters now, then let it matter for all of us." He stepped toward Riggins and faced the crowd. "I led the Irmãos de Fumaça. I lit fires that should never have burned. I buried men who never raised a hand against me. I broke vows. And I abandoned a woman who never stopped fighting for something better." He took a deep breath. "But Maya, she lived. She didn't just survive. She documented everything, every lie, every betrayal, and she left it behind not to condemn, but to free us." He turned to Riggins. "I won't kill you, but I won't carry your sins either." Then Eli reached into his coat and pulled out a worn notebook, Maya's journal. He handed it to Maybelle. "Let the people read it," he said. "Let them decide." Maybelle looked at the cover. Her hands shook. From the edge of the crowd, a familiar voice rose. "You speak of truth, Eli." Tenok stepped forward, flag of Aranaki's tribe tied across his back like a cape. "But we've heard the truth before, and we've buried it every time." Eli met his gaze. "I won't run from it," he said. Tenok nodded slowly. From the crowd, others began to step forward, one by one, laying down small offerings at the center of the square. Trinkets, broken rifles, faded tokens of grief. Then in silence they encircled Eli, not to accuse, to judge. From a side alley, a small figure stepped out, the child. She held no weapon, no words, only the same quiet as before. She walked up to Eli and pressed her forehead against his chest, just for a moment, then stepped back. The circle broke. The crowd parted. Riggins, beaten not by bullets but by truth, walked down from the platform, his hat in his hand, his pride in the dust. And for the first time in Dust Hollow, justice came without a shot. They rode in silence, Eli, Maybelle, and Tenok, toward the edge of town, where the land flattened into cracked stone and golden brush. Their destination was an old military outpost, long abandoned to sand and wind, Fort Redemption. Once a place of battle, now repurposed for something Dust Hollow had never dared before, a trial. Not the kind with judges or juries, this was older, rawer. Inside the fort's crumbling walls, elders from Aranaki's tribe sat in a half-circle, robes flowing, faces carved by time. On the other side stood a delegation from Dust Hollow, traders, ranchers, blacksmiths and saloon keepers. In the center, a worn table marked with the scorch of past fires. Eli stepped into the circle, hat in hand. He didn't look proud, he didn't look afraid, just tired. The oldest elder, a woman named Sheeta, rose. Her voice was a whisper of thunder. "You were once known as Windburner," she said in the native tongue. "The one who turned fire against our homes." Eli nodded. "I was." She turned to the townspeople. "And among you he was sheriff, bounty hunter, protector and traitor." No one spoke. Sheeta looked to Eli again. "What would you call yourself now?" Eli hesitated, then said, "A man trying to be something better." Sheeta nodded slowly. "We will listen, then we will decide." Tenok stepped forward and placed Maya's journal on the table. Sheeta opened it. Pages of pain, names, places, dates. Not just proof of corruption, but of conscience. Maya had tracked everything, even her own husband's crimes, and the moments he changed. "She wrote of your remorse," Sheeta said, "but also of your silence." Eli stepped forward. "I wasn't brave enough to return, to face what I'd done. I thought letting it fade was the same as peace." A murmur of disapproval rippled through both sides. Maybelle spoke next. "He abandoned us," she said clearly, "and I hated him for it. But I also remember the man who fought to build a town where outlaws wouldn't rule. Maybe that man is still in there, maybe not." Then she laid something beside the journal, a small wooden horse burned along the edges. "Lila's," she said softly, "found it in the ruins." The room grew still. One of the ranchers, an old man named Burl, stood. "My brother died in a skirmish with the tribes, but I also know Riggins lied. And Vane twisted our fear." He turned to Eli. "If we don't find peace now, we'll die in our hate." More voices followed, some for, some against, some weeping, some clenching fists. Finally, Sheeta raised her hands. "Enough," she looked at Eli. "You cannot undo your past, you cannot return the dead, but you can carry what remains." She turned to the elders, then nodded. "Your trial is not over," she said, "but it will not be here. There is one more truth that must rise." She gestured to the edge of the fort. From the shadows stepped a young woman, tall, composed, eyes that mirrored Maya's but brighter. "Lila." Eli took a step back. Her voice didn't shake. "I am Lila, daughter of Maya, daughter of Eli, taken by fire, raised by flame." She walked toward the center of the circle. "And I remember everything." She looked directly at Eli. "You are my father, but that doesn't make you my family." Eli couldn't breathe. She continued softer. "But Maya believed in something more. A bridge, a path forward." She looked to the elders. "Let me walk it." Then she turned to the townsfolk. "With both feet." And just like that, the winds shifted. Sheeta smiled faintly. "Then let the past stand and the future begin." But outside the walls of the fort, smoke rose once more from the southern ridge. Dust Hollow's peace had only just begun, and someone was already trying to burn it down. Smoke coiled into the sky like a serpent, black and wide. From the edge of Fort Redemption, the horizon glowed orange. Tenok was the first to speak. "They've set fire to the southern trail." Eli stared at the distant flames, jaw tight. "That's where the trade wagons camp and the tribal burial sites." Lila didn't hesitate. She moved to the stable, saddled her horse with swift, practiced hands. "We ride now." But Sheeta raised her hand. "No," she said calmly. "This fire is meant to bait us. Someone wants chaos." Eli stepped forward. "Then we give them something else." The ride back into Dust Hollow was tense. Ash drifted across the sky like snowfall in reverse. People stood in their doorways, faces smudged with fear, eyes darting. The saloon was shuttered, the sheriff's office abandoned, and in the town square on a makeshift platform, Jonas Vane stood tall, alive, his coat dusted with soot, his hat pulled low. Around him a dozen armed men, roughnecks, mercenaries and drifters, not locals, not allies. "Eli Mercer," he called out the moment they entered. "Bring her to me." Lila froze in her saddle. "Or this whole town burns," Jonas continued, raising a torch in one hand. "Every house, every life, your choice." Maybelle stepped out of the shadows, a rifle across her back. "You're outnumbered," Jonas laughed. "I've been outnumbered since I was born. Doesn't stop me from winning." Then came the scream. A figure staggered from the crowd. Maya. her dress torn, face bruised, but alive. Eli jumped from his horse, sprinting to her. She collapsed into his arms, whispering something he couldn't quite catch. "Lila," she rasped. "Don't let him take her." Jonas raised his voice. "This town's full of cowards and corpses. You want peace? Give me the girl. She's the only one who can unite this place. And if I control her, I control everything." Lila rode forward slowly, past the crowd, past Eli. Her face was calm, but her hands trembled. "Why me?" she asked, stopping just outside Jonas's reach. Jonas grinned. "Because people believe in you, they see your face, and they forget the scars underneath this place." Lila nodded. "You're right. They believe in me." Then she dismounted, pulled a blade from her belt, and cut the braid from her hair, a tribal symbol of lineage. She held it high. "I am not your symbol." She threw the braid at Jonas's feet, and everything broke. Gunfire erupted. Eli pulled Maya behind cover. Tenok dove between horses. Maybell dropped 2 of Jonas's men before they could raise their rifles. But amid the chaos, Lila vanished. Jonas, bleeding from the shoulder, mounted a horse and tore off into the desert, dragging Lila behind him. Eli stood, chest heaving, eyes on the fading trail. He turned to Maya, who clutched his hand. "Bring her back," she whispered. He kissed her forehead gently. "I swear I will." Then he mounted his horse, eyes full of fire, and rode into the night, chasing blood, sand, and the last chance to put things right. The desert stretched out in all directions, silent, golden, unforgiving. Eli rode fast, every heartbeat sinking with the thundering hooves beneath him. Dust clung to his face, sweat streaked his brow, but his eyes burned with one thing only: Lila. Somewhere ahead, Jonas Vane was dragging her deeper into the wastelands, toward the canyons known only to smugglers and outlaws. No roads, no law, just stone, heat, and ghosts. Back in Dust Hollow, the fires had been contained, but the damage was done. Tribal grounds scorched, trade routes in ruin. Maya lay in a makeshift infirmary, breathing in pained rhythms. She had lived, but the wound cut deep, more symbolic than physical. A mark of everything Dust Hollow had buried and refused to face. But Eli wasn't thinking about Dust Hollow, not now. He followed the broken trail of hoofprints and scattered cloth into the gorge. The sun dropped behind the cliffs, casting shadows that stretched like hands ready to pull a man down. He found the first clue just before twilight. A necklace, Lila's, torn, lying in the dirt. A deliberate mark. She was fighting, resisting. He pressed on, deeper into the canyons, where the rocks swallowed sound and men vanished. It was here, years ago, that the Hermans de Fumasa had cornered a fleeing tribe, and it was here that Eli had made his most brutal decisions. This land remembered him. Now he would answer for it. Jonas Vane's camp was half hidden beneath an outcrop of rock. A fire flickered low. His horse was tethered. His men, only 2 now, slept with rifles across their chests. Lila was tied, arms bound, mouth uncovered. Her eyes met Eli's through the brush. She didn't flinch, didn't cry. He signaled with his hand. She blinked once. Then she kicked over the pot beside her, sending a plume of smoke into the fire. The flames erupted, blinding. Eli moved fast. 2 shots, symbolic cracks in the night. 1 man dropped. The other fled into the canyon. Jonas stood, drawing his revolver, dragging Lila to her feet as a shield. "Don't take another step," he warned. Eli emerged from the shadows, hands raised. "No guns, Jonas," he said. "Just you and me." Jonas laughed bitterly. "You don't get to play righteous now. You think giving up blood buys you back your soul?" "I'm not buying anything," Eli said. "I'm burying it." "Then bury this," Jonas growled, pressing the barrel to Lila's temple. Eli didn't blink. "You want power? You want land? She's not the key to any of it. She's a kid, one that people believe in, not because of blood, but because of who she chose to be." Jonas hesitated. Lila's voice cut through. "You're afraid. That's why you keep talking." Jonas turned, furious, but in that instant Eli moved. He tackled Jonas. The gun flew into the dirt. Fists slammed into flesh. Sand flew. Eli's hands wrapped around Jonas's collar, dragging him down to the earth, like the sins that had haunted both of them. Then silence. Jonas lay unconscious, bleeding but alive. Lila stood over them, her breathing steady. Eli looked up at her. "You all right?" She nodded slowly. "I think I am now." He smiled for the first time in years, and the desert for once felt still, not empty. By dawn, they rode back into Dust Hollow. People watched in silence as Eli dragged Jonas Vane behind him, bound and beaten. Tenok met them at the edge of town. a small fire of relief flickering in his chest. Inside the saloon-turned-infirmary, Maya opened her eyes as they entered. Lila ran to her. Eli hung back in the doorway, hands trembling, not from fear, but from something far heavier. Maya looked at him and smiled weakly. "You came back." Eli knelt beside her, placing her hand in his. "I never really left," he whispered. "I just forgot how to return." The desert wind carried no heat that morning, only silence. Eli stood at the edge of Coyote Rock, the jagged cliff where trails ended, and some men too. Behind him, Dust Hollow waited in uneasy stillness. Before him, Sheriff Clay Riggins crouched beside a satchel, the leather straps bulging with paper and gold. He'd been trying to flee before the sun rose. Now he was cornered. "Funny, ain't it?" Riggins said, not turning around. "All this time I figured you'd be the one to run. Turns out I'm the last coward standing." Eli said nothing. Riggins finally rose and turned to face him. His badge had been torn from his vest. His face bore the erosion of guilt and time. "I lied," Riggins said. "Forged that letter. That got you out of town the night Maya screamed your name into the fire." He kicked the satchel toward Eli. Gold coins spilled out, clinking over stone. "That's your cut. Blood money." Eli didn't move. Riggins gave a dry laugh. "Thought you'd pull a gun by now. Thought that's what you came for." Eli's voice came quiet. "Steady. I came to hear you say it." "I said it," Riggins muttered. "And it don't make a damn bit of difference." He walked to the edge of the cliff, looking out over the desert. "We all tell ourselves lies, Eli. You told yourself you weren't running. I told myself I was protecting the town. We're both liars." Eli stepped closer. "I told myself I wasn't a father anymore." Riggins turned. "And now?" "I don't know," Eli said, "but I want to be the kind of man she believes I can." Riggins's jaw tightened. "She has Maya's fire. She has both of ours," Eli replied. "The kind that burns down everything unless we control it." For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then Riggins reached into his coat, slowly, hands raised, pulling out a bundle of documents. Property deeds, names, signatures, secrets that, if revealed, would tear the town's foundation in two. "I was going to take these south," he said. "Sell them, disappear." Eli nodded. "And now, I'm tired of disappearing." He dropped the papers at Eli's feet. Then, without another word, Riggins stepped past him, walked down the slope and vanished into the canyon trail. Not in chains, not in glory, just gone. Eli stood alone. He picked up the papers, dusted off the sand. This wasn't redemption, but it was accountability. That night, the town gathered in the square. Maya, seated beside Lila, leaned on a cane. Her wound still slowed her, but her eyes, those same fierce eyes, watched every face with clarity. Eli stood on the platform beside Maybelle and Tennock. Together, they read aloud the names on the deeds, the land stolen, the lies told. No gallows, no guns, only truth. The townsfolk listened. Some wept, others shouted, but no one turned away. Then, with calm and resolve, Eli laid the papers in a metal basin and lit a match. The fire rose, not to destroy, but to cleanse. When it was done, ashes swirled into the night sky, and the past, at least part of it, was finally laid to rest. Dust Hollow woke to a new kind of morning. The air still tasted of soot and regret, but there was something different now. Movement, the kind that comes after long silence. In the town square, wagons were being repaired. Buckets of fresh water passed from hand to hand. A group of tribal warriors worked side by side with ranchers to rebuild the burned trading post. And in the heart of it all stood Lila, sleeves rolled, face streaked with ash and sweat, organizing the recovery. She wasn't commanding, she was guiding. Her presence alone was enough to make men listen, and her silence stronger than most sermons. By midday, a large meeting formed in front of the old saloon. Half the town, half the tribe, a vote. Maybelle stepped onto the saloon's porch and spoke first. "We've been living by fear and bloodlines for too long. It's time we do better." Tennock followed, voice calm but firm. "This land remembers everything, but it's ready to forgive if we are." Then Lila walked forward. She didn't need a speech. She raised her mother's pendant, Maya's symbol of peace, and held it up high. People nodded. Hands rose. Unanimous. A new council was formed, half from Dust Hollow, half from Aranaki's people. Shared power, shared responsibility. It was historic, but peace rarely arrives without one final shadow. From the western hills, a single rider appeared. Dust trailed behind him. Eli recognized the horse before he saw the man. Jonas Vane, bloodied, beaten, but alive. He rode straight into the square, pulling hard on the reins before dismounting. With one swift motion, he grabbed Lila and threw her over the saddle. A pistol appeared in his hand as screams echoed across the square. "Back off," he roared. "She's mine now." Eli didn't draw. He didn't shout. He walked forward, slowly, one step at a time. "You can't outrun what's coming, Jonas," he said. "This time, it's not just me, it's everyone." Jonas pressed the pistol harder to Lila's side. "I built this. Without me, this piece dies." Lila, calm even now, whispered, "You never built anything. You only burned." Jonas's hand trembled. Eli stopped a few feet away. "Let her go." Silence. Then Lila elbowed Jonas in the ribs and dropped to the ground. In the same motion, Eli lunged forward, slamming Jonas to the dirt. The pistol fired harmlessly into the sky. Tenok rushed in. Maybelle grabbed Lila. Jonas was pinned. He didn't fight anymore. He just wept. For what? No one knew. Eli didn't speak. He just stood over him, chest rising and falling, the whole town watching. Not as a gunslinger, not as an outlaw, but as a man. That night, Jonas Vane was locked away in the old jailhouse, the same cell where Eli once waited for judgment. And this time, the town didn't celebrate with drinks or cheers. They lit candles, and they listened to stories, to songs, to the wind that now carried something new through Dust Hollow, a chance. The desert dawn stretched across Dust Hollow like a blessing, soft, golden, unfamiliar. No gunfire, no smoke, just morning. Eli stood at the ridge outside town, staring toward the horizon where the sand met sky. In his hand, Maya's pendant. Around his feet, hoofprints led in all directions. But today, for once, none of them meant running. Behind him, Dust Hollow was stirring, but not the same Dust Hollow. The new council, half settlers, half tribal elders, had convened its first official session in the old saloon. Maybelle, hair tied up and boots dusted from hours of work, had been appointed liaison. Tenok, now a symbol of patience and strength, helped broker safe travel routes between villages. And Lila, the girl once caught between bloodlines, was now the thread weaving it all together. She had chosen to stay, to live between both worlds, not torn by them. Maya watched from the infirmary porch, her cane in hand, her body still healing, but her soul lighter. She had survived more than most, and finally, after all these years, she had something to rest in. That morning, Eli walked back into town one last time. No weapon at his side, no badge, just a quiet man with too many miles behind him. He stopped in front of the old sheriff's office. Riggins's nameplate had been taken down, replaced with a simple sign that read, "Community Office." Inside, the desk was covered in papers, land agreements, school plans, and letters to be sent to Washington. Eli picked up one, studied the handwriting, and smiled. It was Lila's. She was writing a petition to open a bilingual school, a place for every child, every name. He folded it gently and placed it back. Then he walked into the back room. The cell where he'd once waited alone was now empty. He stepped inside, closed the door behind him, and stood there, not out of guilt, but to say goodbye. Later that afternoon, the town gathered one last time. At the edge of the mesa where the old gallows once stood, now a circle of stones and flowers. No speeches, no ceremony. Eli stood in the center, facing Maya and Lila. He pulled something from his coat, a small leather pouch. Inside it, his badge. He looked to Lila. "This belonged to a man I don't want to be anymore." He handed it to her. "I can't change who I was, but you've already changed who will be." She didn't speak. She just nodded. He turned to Maya. Their eyes met and held. No words, just the understanding of two souls that had endured everything and still reached for each other. Maya stepped forward, held his hand. "Will you stay?" Eli looked down the trail that led north, the one he used to fear, the one he now saw clearly. "I'll write," he said. "You'll hear from me this time." She smiled, tears rising but not falling. Eli walked to the ridge, tied his bag to the saddle, and before mounting, he knelt. He dug into the earth, and there, beneath the open sky, he buried the badge. No gravestone, just sand and silence. From a distance, the wind picked up, lifting the dust in slow spirals. It didn't sting, it cleansed. Dust Hollow had been a place of fire, blood, and buried truths. Now it was something else. Not perfect, not peaceful, but possible. And as Eli rode into the horizon, the desert didn't swallow him. It carried him forward. A man no longer running from his past, but walking into whatever future he had left.
Hope you enjoyed the story. Comment where you're watching from, leave a like, and subscribe to the channel.